Hey, what's up YouTube? Angelson here, playing a match on Sakura Ridge, and my opponent is H-Der Schrecklich. Another name for me to butcher. And you guys know I love this map. This is probably one of my favorite rush strategy maps. So instead of my usual lone sword contingent, I decided to bring Katana Sams. Now granted, I have really good lone swords. I have Blade Master, I have Way of the Eiko Wiki. I don't use Rengo's Teachings, I think that's a horrible one. But I have some really strong lone swords, and I'm in a sword clan. I just think, for rush type strategies or rush type builds, it's better to bring a stronger component. Now maybe if I brought 8 lone swords, that would be more effective than these 4 well-veteran katana samurai, but I just decided to bring these 4, and I don't know, I think it's kind of cheesy to bring 8 lone swords to a fight. So you can see I have a rush build with a rush strategy. I have 2 Matchlock Ashigaru with 2 Yari Ashigaru ready for a spear wall. I also have 4 very well veteran Katana Samurai, Naginata Warrior Monk, strictly for Warcry, and in the back I have my Bow Sams. And the only reason I bring these Bow Sams is for target selection purposes to inflict morale penalties. So say you're fighting a unit and you're engaged in melee. If you want to inflict extra morale penalties on that unit, hit them with Archer Fire. It puts some type of morale damage modifier on them that lowers their morale faster. I probably could have done better if I had brought 2 Bow Ashigaru, but for some reason I decided to bring these pretty well veteran Bow Sams. Then you have my general, who is already dismounted, Chesty Puller. The reason a lot of leadership generals will dismount their general before the fight and move their general dismounted is for ease of ability use. Say I want to use stand and fight so my archers and my matchlocks have a better reload, but then my opponent decides to try and engage me. I need to get out of stand and fight, pop my rally, and then go back to stand and fight. If my general's mounted, he will dismount, go to stand and fight, and then when I take off stand and fight to use rally, he will run back to his horses, try to mount back up, and then in order to go back to the stand and fight, you have to wait for him to dismount again. It's just time consuming, and if you're going to use your general like this, dismounted, I would just make sure that you have the capabilities to protect him from any cav that may get around your rear. You can also see I have 4 units of cav up front. I have a light cav with a katana cav, and a vanilla Yari cav with another katana cav. My katana cav are pretty well veteraned, and back here I have Great Guard. There are only a few maps I really use katana cav on, and this is one of them because it's a rush build. If your opponent has a lot of swords, which a lot of the rank 10 opponents I'm fighting bring anywhere from 6 to 8 lone sword Ashigarus, as long as they don't have sufficient spear coverage, your katana cav can get in there and absolutely molest those lone swords. So you can see my strategy for here is to get my cav screen pushed up quick on this hill, engage his forces, confuse them, give my matchlocks time to get set up, and have these Great Guard in the back for anything I might need to use them for. Looking at my opponent's army, first of all, he's a melee general. He has a really strong infantry, and a lot of them are actually spears. He has 2 pretty well vetted bow warrior monks. Then he has 2 Naginata samurai. He has 2 katana sams with an odachi, and then 2 warrior nuns, I believe. So I'm actually surprised with this build he was going for a key building. Granted, the sword dojo is a good key building. I think it gives +2 melee attack. I may be wrong though. Your opponents on this type of map, this small map, most of the time they're going to rush, and they are not going to give you time to capture these key buildings. If I had brought, say, bow warrior monks, I could have easily sat up here and engaged him with my bow warrior monks from this forest, from this cover, and really did a number on his units. So I think with this melee type build, you're better off rushing your opponent, and he only brought 1 Great Guard unit. Another important thing that I see a lot of good melee generals doing, forego the Great Guard. If you want to bring cav that's a little bit stronger but not as weak as light cav, I would say bring Yari cav. But I think the ultimate cav tool, especially when you have a spear heavy army, is light cav. And light cav are not to decimate your opponent's great guard. They enable you to tie your opponent's cav down and let you bring your spear infantry to the fight to take care of his cav. So this is probably the first mistake my opponent made, trying to come out here and take a key building. So you can see as the fight starts, my cav actually is the first to rush out. So that's precisely what I do. I rush my cav out, just trying to look for opportunities, angles of attack, ways I can hurt him. Still a little bit worried about these bow warrior monks. And at this point I'm pretty much thinking my cav, at least these 4 initial cav for this screen, are sacrificial. I'm not too worried about them dying or anything like that. I'm much more technical with my Great Guard units. So my cav go ahead and get down here, and I see a few targets of opportunity, but he's actually really quick with his spears. He did a really good job, and I really can't get my light cav out of there in time. They end up getting tangled, and this unit was actually really good at tying up 2 cav units. I still managed to get the light cav back here and hit the bows, but his matchlocks are already ready for my light cav. And this katana cav is engaging 2 spear units and these bow warrior monks. I threw my Yari cav down here to take care of his 1 unnecessary Great Guard unit. Then here's my other katana cav unit. Meanwhile, you can see my army is just trying to get set up on this hill, get some type of dominating position. This katana cav, I decided to see if I could punch through and hit his matchlocks, just rip right through these lines. They do get a little bit, but then they start taking shots, which I'm fine with because he's shooting his own units as well. And then I switched these katana cav to actually start taking his general's bodyguard, and look at that. This katana cav is fighting with 3 or 4 different units, and it still knocks his general's bodyguard. Look at that, 18 out of 36. It's already knocked it down halfway. Let's see how much farther it can knock it down. 16, 15. That's crazy. Katana cav are excellent for fighting melee generals, by the way. Like I said, this is one of the few maps I actually use katana cav. So now I'm just trying to get my matchlocks hurried up and pushed down. I see him bring his bow general, or his melee general down here. I managed to get off a few lucky shots, take a few more of his units down. But now it's just a matter of getting my matchlocks down. And at this point, my opponent should have been thinking about consolidating his units in this forest, granting them some kind of protection, hiding his spear units so I can't see where they are when I'm maneuvering the rest of my cav. And then, this was the first mistake I think my opponent made. He used Whistling Arrow, but if you look at the position of his bow warrior monks, they are all the way back here. Whistling Arrow is an AoE. Anything it passes over, whether it's friendly or enemy units, is going to get this debuff, so he debuffs all of his own troops as well. So you can see my matchlocks are already starting to get set up. I'm trying to select targets with them. You've got to be selective with your targets, and since these are vanilla, I'm not too worried about them getting picked off. They're just here to shake up his morale, do some damage to his troops before I can push the rest of my troops in. And then my opponent decides to rush all of his infantry forward. This was another huge mistake. He should not have rushed forward. I think he would have been better, honestly, camping it out. Sometimes it's necessary to camp. It's not a dishonorable strategy. Now, if you do it from the start of a battle, yeah, it's pretty dishonorable in my book. But when you were forced to, that's a whole different story. And you can see my Katana Sams are actually now rushing into this fight. And then my Naginata Warrior Monks are going to come in as well. I get my Great Guard through the screen and start working on his general, his bows, and his matchlocks. The Naginata Sam, as soon as he gets up here, he's going to pop his war cry, and you can see all these units are demoralized. They're getting ready to rout. These Katana Sams are tearing up his Katana Sams. I didn't even see him use his bonsai on his Nodashi. So that's something to think about if you're going to use a melee rush strategy, whether you're a leadership general or a melee general. My opponent had a good army. I think if he had played a little bit better, he could have came out on top, especially with those bow warrior monks that he had and all those spears. Could have rendered my cav useless. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed that. Hopefully you learned something. If you have any comments or feedback, please feel free to leave anything for me. I am dead serious. I'm open for constructive criticism.